So with Christian and Edouard Moueix on the opening day of the 2014 campaign, and great to be with you. And also I think important to ask some questions about the vintage and about the market. How would you define the character of 2014 with your wines?
Well, climatically it was a very specific vintage. I would say almost like any vintage, but the bloom went very well in June and the crop was potentially big. Then sadly, July and August were very difficult. A lot of rain in July, not very warm in August, but we were blessed by the fact that the late season was beautiful. Beginning August 25 or August 25th, very precisely, the weather turned out good. September was beautiful, a few showers, but really beautiful. Early October was beautiful. So it's a vintage which was saved by the late season. I have seen that a few times in my career. So I will use the word which you used yourself this morning, freshness, which is kind of typical of a wine which has been conceived without the big heat of July and August. Freshness, fresh fruit, clearly red fruit, no black fruit, we'll describe that longer. A vintage with charm, elegance, probably early drinking, a little tricky in that sense that there are more tannins than you will believe when you taste the wine. We know it by analysis. So altogether a good vintage with a good potential for aging, but a lot of pleasure in the early days. Freshness and immediate fruit. Those will be the words I will use to describe the vintage.
We go back a year. 2013 was for us, and I suspect most of the UK trade, and I suspect the world trade, the worst en primeur campaign in certainly our history. Why do you think that was?
Well, there's multiple reasons. The number one being people have been overexcited with the en primeur system, with the 09, with the 10, and that enthusiasm started to run out with 11 and the 10s arriving on the market, and 13 was just at that wrong period where people needed something new. That would probably be one reason. The other reason is obviously it was a difficult vintage. It was a difficult year. The climate was not with us. We had to work extremely hard in the vineyard to produce decent wines, drinkable wines that will provide a normal pleasure, but nothing great by any means. And therefore wines which will be quite exciting, such as the sevens in a few years when they will start to be opened, and then they will turn as a good surprise because people will have no expectations. But there was clearly no investment excitement behind those wines, and unfortunately the primeur system nowadays for many people is linked with the investment feeling.
And so, alongside the difficulties in quality of 2013, there was also clearly the issue of how that quality was priced. I mean, I think the definition of value is the price in relation to quality, and clearly the prices, and I'm speaking in general about Bordeaux rather than specifically about Moueix wines, because you have a reputation for being pragmatic and very level-headed about your pricing, and customers buy you year in, year out. But if you take 13, the quality and the price of 13, how do you think that 2014 in general throughout Bordeaux should be priced?
Well, it's very case specific, of course, because last year some people did the right thing, and even if they did the right thing by truly lowering their prices, the market did not necessarily meet their expectations on the sales behind for the reasons we just mentioned. And some people had that very strange philosophy of saying, whatever I do, the market will not buy my wine, so why should I make an effort? And those people clearly should not raise their prices, or raise their prices by a very small amount, or maybe up to 10% grand maximum. The people who made the efforts in 2013 of listening, of looking at the quality of their wines frankly, and then listening to the market and truly lowering their prices, could possibly go up to 10 to 20%, but that would be a grand maximum. This is what we're trying to advise our partners and customers when they decide of their prices. We on our side have decided for the wines that we released at the beginning of the campaign not to move. So the prices will be the same as last year for our own wines,
which I suspect will be well met by your customers in the UK. Picking up, therefore, going back to 2014, do you see any qualitative comparisons that could be made with any earlier years?
You have more experience. Maybe since I have more experience, I would prefer to have less experience, but that's a fact. 78 was a vintage where we had a poor summer and a beautiful late season, starting September 1st. When in 2014 it started August 25th. In those years we didn't make the same effort in terms of crop thinning, canopy management, and everything. So I think it could be a 78 plus. So there could be a comparison with 96 as well, which was clearly a left bank vintage. Maybe not only because they peak later than we do, and then they get more sun when there is a late harvest, but besides because we had a few sprinkles in September this year, 2014, which apparently they didn't get on the west side, on the Medoc side. So, and that may be one of your next questions. It looks so far slightly like a Medoc vintage, a left bank vintage. We are very happy about that ourselves. But of course, beyond being a right or left bank vintage, there is always individual efforts which make a lot of a difference. Pleasant, like the 2004 we are drinking recently, which are quite pleasant. With a lot of freshness. I don't know, I could not compare to a more recent vintage, you see.
Some people have cited 2001, which is a strange comparison climatically, because we know that 2001, apart from that difficulty in the 3 weeks in July, was a pretty classic growing season in many ways. So
I see no comparison with 2001 myself, honestly.
The only link and what we can hear with the comparison with the one is the fact that it's a non-hydric stress vintage. We didn't lack water in 01, which is exactly what happened in 2014 as well. We had the vineyard never got into a stress where it started to lose its leaves and etc. So it was quite an easy maturing for the vines as long as they got the sun in September and early October.
And even the start of the growing season, rather before the growing season, it was a very wet, mild winter.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
I guess the water reserves.
Well, there was so much water that the vines grew so fast. Yeah. So it is important to understand that the vegetation was luxurious, you know. So canopy management was very important. It's always important, but many times we say that we should not keep too many leaves for such and such reason. So in 2014, due to the luxurious vegetation, we had to de-leaf on the south side, which is always a risky decision because we needed as much sun as possible. So we de-leafed on both sides, and that allowed us to do late crop thinning of those clusters on the south side, and that was a very precise crop thinning in September, a few weeks, only 3 weeks before picking, which was a great decision in terms of quality. And that's why, even if it sounds, as I said, like a Medoc vintage, the chateaus who made a lot of efforts on the right bank can match without problem the quality of the left bank, I think.
And finally, how do you score vintage out of 20?
Well, we are quite tough scorers, but overall it would be more between 13 and 15 out of 20, so the average being very easily 14. Sounds like a reasonable score.
Well, in French tradition, when we were to school, 10 was average, 12 was rather good, 14 was good, 16 was very good, and 18 was excellent. We never got 20, so we are very demanding. You know about French culture, of course, and so when Edouard says 14, it means it's good. That's the way we consider. There will be a few very good wines, very few, but basically it's a good vintage and probably no more.
Edouard and Christian Moueix, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.